Creativity Podcast. I'm your host, Mari Riesberg. Over the past several years, I've combined my degrees in acting and somatic psychology to share my sustaining creativity techniques with performers. And now I've decided to share it with a bigger audience that includes you. I believe we are all creative, and this podcast is all about that. I'll be interviewing people from all backgrounds, ages, and creativity experiences to share just how creative we all are. Today, I'll be chatting with Zak Kilberg, founder and CEO of Social Construct Films. Please enjoy Zak Kilberg. Tell us who you are and what you do and what you're doing.
Sure, yeah. So I'm Zak Kilberg, and I am the founder and CEO of Social Construct Films, which is a film and television production company based in Asheville, North Carolina.
Awesome. Thanks. I'm really excited. Zak and I, for those who are listening, we went to college together and have known each other for 20 years, which I really can't even believe that it's been that long. And it makes me really excited to have you here sharing what you do and your experience of creativity and your ideas behind it. So let's just jump in. So what does creativity mean to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So creativity, I think, is the kind of, just to go there, just to jump right in, it's kind of like the essence of life, I would say. Regardless of your faith or spirituality, I think creativity is that essence that causes all things to grow and create and evolve. It almost just to go back to just to the most basic form, creative energy is the cells in a flower opening up and blossoming. I imagine that's the energy that's going on in there. It's similar to what we feel when we have an idea or when we have a intuition, or we've got a a strong feeling or belief. It's kind of deep within us, even underneath our conscious mind in some ways, I would say. It's the kind of essence of all thought is creative. And just to go as deep as possible right away. But
I love it. I love that image that comes with an essence or a spark or something that helps you blossom. I think that has a rich imagery behind it.
Yeah. And then I think from there, then there's more superficial, but not superficial, but more superficial definition of it's, creating a painting or a script, writing a poem. But then, I think it's also applicable towards business. You could be a creative, business strategy thinker, or, playing chess can be creative, inventing some kind of science, patent or something. That's all creativity. So it really does. It's fairly broad, and I think it's applicable towards most aspects of human life, and also other life as well. Like I was saying earlier, on a cellular level, I think that's creative energy as well.
Yeah, that energetic connection that we have and many people can experience being outside. And I know, living in Colorado, going up into the mountains, I have a visceral shift being outside in big open spaces versus being outside in the backyard of my house.
Yeah. And just to go super woo with it.
Please, go woo.
I would also say creativity is love.
Yeah, I don't think that's woo. That's I love that.
But no, what I mean by creativity is love is then you can take it up to the spiritual side and just be the entire creation of the universe is an act of love. And that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But I think, at some point it's just why are we all here? And it's just so consciousness can experience itself. And there's, yeah, obviously there's, a lot of suffering in the universe as well. But if you, I don't know, through like, meditation and Buddhism and like all these things, like if you can get to a place of like peaceful, loving energy in your heart, even the suffering and even the challenges, you can see that they're actually gifts because they're, providing you with experience and challenges that you can overcome and become more empowered ultimately. So like there's a way to kind of flip challenges to actually be positive.
You're making some meaning out of a difficult or challenging situation or a traumatic experience, finding the silver lining in our current adventure we're all on right now.
Incarnation.
Being able to connect with people you haven't talked to in 20 years.
Exactly. Yes.
Haven't seen. Yeah. And when you think about yourself being creative, what does it feel like in your system to be creative?
Yeah. So for me, there's a lot of different feelings. The first thing that comes up is, for some reason, I want to just mention that like when I was young, I was diagnosed with like ADD. And that was like a really like bad thing at the time. Like you need to be medicated. I was 10 years old, they're putting like Ritalin and amphetamines into my system and like crazy, crazy stuff. And it was like, this was like a really bad thing that was like, it was a disorder and,
your hyperactivity
hyperactive and, it was like really bad. And so, for some reason, that's the first thing that came up because like, what does it feel like? Now as an adult, like being ADD or whatever, that hyperactivity, that attention deficit thing is actually one of my biggest attributes because it allows me, the way that it feels for me is like, oh, I can multitask. Like I'm distracted, I'm doing all these things, but I'm actually doing all these things at the same time. And it's like moving the business forward in a pretty, aggressive, exciting way. So now it like feels, that ADD actually feels like a gift. And so what creativity feels like within that spectrum that like I'm, from my own perspective, it feels like, sorry, there's some talking in the other room here. I got ADD'd.
No worries. Okay. You're allowed to be distracted. It's a part of being human. Good.
But what does creativity feel like? It feels like something that kind of like bubbles up and it's not something that can be forced. Well, I think it probably can be, but like, you can force yourself to be in a place of openness to creativity, but the creativity is naturally flowing constantly. It's kind of like a natural, endless well of energy as long as you're alive. And it's like whether you can be patient and like sit and like tap into it. And so whatever it's usually related to a project. So it's like if I'm focusing on a thing, then I have to like be in the right mind to like allow the creativity to flow with the focus of that thing. So whether it's a business deal, a contract where I'm like, I'll add that thing to it. Or whether it's a script and we're doing creative notes, or whether it's just an idea of like an actor, like, oh, that's an actor that we hadn't thought of that wasn't on any list. Like, oh, that's a great idea. Like bring that into the conversation. So it's kind of like you can direct your creativity, your endless, infinite creativity flow towards anything. It could be directed towards your health. It could be directed towards your relationships. It could be directed towards your business. Whatever the project is. You can categorize every aspect of your life into like projects if you want. And that
I like that
really
idea.
good.
It's a life force almost that you can jump into, step out of. Maybe you have barriers at certain points in your life that keep you from stepping into it in a bigger way.
Yeah. I think everyone has access to this creativity, this creative energy, but I think it's suppressed as a kind of product of a society that's more focused on, making money or more superficial things instead of like a deeper fulfillment. A lot of like, and just to go there, like, I think, the fulfillment is kind of the value of fulfillment is like how much money do you make, or like how successful you are, instead of like how creatively fulfilled you are. And I understand, that makes sense to me, but I think
it sounds like what you're talking about is the journey, and you're seeing that society is more focused on the destination and the final product, and you're talking about the journey to get there is where the creativity has the life, can blossom, and it's not necessarily only about the destination.
Yeah, I just feel like there's a blockage in creative flow for like a lot of people that I know, that they just feel like, oh, I'm not creative, or I'm not an artist, or whatever that is, instead of realizing that you are in your own way. And if you allowed yourself to be, like, it's impossible to know like what could emerge. But it does feel more of just a societal suppression of like finding out like who we really are, and just the blockages that exist through, it's passed down through our parents and through our teachers and through our classmates, and through our media. It's like we're getting hit from all angles. Sometimes it feels like that. That's not the case for everyone, but it does feel like the majority of people that I know, there's just degrees of blockages that like we kind of need to work through if we want to be, if we want to go deeper into our creative spirit.
Yeah. Have you found what your creative blocks are, and how have you moved through them?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, so it's so interesting because it really does, it kind of expands into so many different aspects of life. I think for me, communication and like being skilled, like knowing how to communicate with others in an effective way, and like just having a toolkit, but we're not like given this like foundation of empathy. It doesn't feel like that. And I think it's like our parents wanted us to have that, but they don't have the tools, like the toolkit to really communicate in an effective way, and really express your needs. So like there's nonviolent communication is something that I, learned about after like a slew of failed relationships, where it was just like, and just being kind of like narcissistic and like egocentric, and just blaming, like everything was like it wasn't like I wasn't aware of my contributions to like relationships not working, whether it was a girlfriend or family relationship or whatever. But I would say there was a shift that took place when a relationship ended, and I was really like inquiring. I was like, okay, like I know that relationship wasn't healthy, like, and it was like looking inward and being like, okay, how am I responsible for this relationship? Instead of just blaming my partner, like it was like that inward inquiry. And that was, it's interesting how you just like open up and then suddenly like there's a flood of like information, like randomly, it kind of feels like. And I was introduced to nonviolent communication, which is, this book by Marshall Rosenberg, who's an incredible, he's passed away now, but he was a psychologist, and he worked with like, feuding tribes in Africa. He worked with like the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And he worked with like murders on death row, and like having them actually meet with like the families of like people that they killed, and like facilitating like mediations and healings.
He did some pretty incredible work, and the nonviolent communication is such a incredible foundation for people to use in relationship to support themselves, to support each other. And it sounds like you really benefited from learning it.
Yeah, well, it was a total revelation for me. Like it was just like, oh, I don't know how to express my needs.
Yeah, so it sounds like once you were able to kind of move through your block around communication, your ability to communicate opened up a new aspect of creativity for you in your life.
To tie it back to that, I feel like that was and there was creativity there prior, but it was like it was like blocked. And so you had asked about the blockage, and like that was probably like the single largest revelation and like energetic shift in my life ever, was like that class, because it was just such an eye-opener of just like taking personal responsibility for all my relationships and all of, and it still pops up. You're still like, oh, that guy's an asshole, like, or whatever.
Right.
Like, you still, it's not like you don't have judgments, but it just gives you some tools to navigate those situations and relationships more gracefully. In order to be creative, removing blockages, but also like being optimized from a health and mindfulness place. And like, this is where it's connected, is like, the more conscious you are and the more fearless you are within yourself, the more you're like not hiding from aspects of yourself or aspects of things that you're like burying because you don't want to confront them, whether it's trauma from your past or whether it's just things that make you uncomfortable. I feel like the more awareness you can have towards all that, the more creativity is available to you. For me, the more healthy I am and the more disciplined I am in, taking care of myself, the more that kind of opens up ease in kind of tapping into some of those things. And so I consider like the nonviolent communication or healthy communication and healthy relationships as part of that like holistic approach to tapping into that creative life force. If that makes sense.
It absolutely does. No, I think it's great. I think being able to figure out what supports you to tap into your creative life force regularly is really important, and it's going to be different for everyone. Your prescription won't work for someone else and theirs won't work for you, but it doesn't mean both aren't valid and important and worthwhile, and to keep doing it if it's working. And if it's not working, you get to reevaluate.
Exactly.
So when you think about creativity and childhood, what's your earliest memory of creativity?
Doing like, I remember doing a play with my father. We did like James and the Giant Peach, and like he was the captain and I was like the second mate, and we were like, we got to do that together. It was pretty fun. I think I was like 7 years old. So yeah, that's like, feels like the first, and that was amazing. Like that was, like ballet class, hated it. Cello, hated it. But like to do that play was like life-changing. And that's kind of what pushed me, toward, for pretty much from that moment on, I was pursuing, entertainment through, theater and film, and ultimately film. But
Nice.
So yeah, that's kind of what comes up for me when I'm just thinking about like, what is my actual first memory?
Early memories of creativity and creative expression.
And I'm sure there was like playing outside with my friends and stuff like that, but that's not, I don't have like a clear like, oh, that time when we played, He-Man action figures or whatever, like I don't quite, there's not like a thing that comes up. Like I remember that play as being, I can remember like being on stage and the lights and it being like this, like, and being backstage and it being kind of late, on a Friday night, and like makeup artist, it's just like crazy, kind of like, this is so exciting, like this is a real thing,
that excitement that really speaks to the kind of bubbles of excitement, that effervescence experience of what it is to be in a really creative space with other people who are participating in the same type of creativity.
Exactly. That collaborative, you're putting on a show. And that's when I fell in love with theater. And I just, done probably, I don't know how many 50 plays or whatever, since then, like, yeah, it's been a long time since I've done anything like that, but.
I was just going to ask you, have you done any performing in the near past?
Recently? No, I had it's been about 13 years since I had my last hip hop concert. I was a hip hop artist for a while there in Los Angeles.
Oh my gosh. Say more. What does that mean? You were a hip hop artist. What were you doing?
Yeah. So I was writing raps and performing them with a group and putting shows together, and like opened for some pretty big artists like KRS-One and some other kind of major artists in LA. And I didn't do like an album or anything, but I had I had recorded some songs, but we were called Conjuring Evolution.
Oh, now that name, that sounds familiar to me.
Yeah.
It's kind of coming back to me a little bit, but.
So I was always interested in that, from like, even when I was like 10 years old, I remember like, listening to like Crisscross and, these like kids hip hop and stuff. And then got, just stayed interested in it. And then, I was writing it more from like political and like spiritual, I would say. It was like conscious hip hop and then moved to the West Coast after college and started working with some musicians out there and stuff. So I think that was the last performance I ever did was a hip hop concert in like 2007, probably.
And what shifted for you to go from performing to be more on the production side of things?
Oh yeah. So there's a few things. I would say I definitely got tired of auditioning. Like I got tired of, and I would say like the tired of auditioning was like, it was kind of coming up as I also started being interested in writing and like creating my own stories. So there was kind of like, it was like a two-pronged, situation where the more interested I became in like, I have all these stories. It was like creativity was like bubbling up within me of like, I wasn't being fulfilled by the acting stuff and the auditioning and the performing. And I was like, there's stories that I want to tell. And so I started, writing and envisioning stories for film and wrote, directed, and produced some things. And, had some short films. Okay. I did a short film in 2006 called Nameless that but it was still as a vehicle for me as an actor, but it was like, I wrote it and directed it and produced it. And it, did like the San Francisco Film Festival and a lot of other regional film festivals and stuff. And that actually helped, it helped me book some additional acting roles because it actually turned out pretty good. And then I wanted to write a feature film, and I knew like I just had all these ideas, and like you start to look at like just how you see the world and like trusting that like, oh, this way that I see the world is unique. Like I have a unique perspective, and how do I like tap into that and like take that unique perspective and convert it to a story that I want to tell. So then screenwriting became the next thing. And so I packed up from LA for the summer and went to visit a friend in Asheville, North Carolina, where I currently live. And I spent 5 weeks here. Basically with my friend, we were doing a raw food diet. I was basically doing like a full cleanse. And I was just writing all day, every day. And I was like, I bought a book called How to Write a Screenplay in like 21 days. And I was like, and it's just like, it's like, this is how you do it. And I did it pretty much. Yeah. Yeah, totally. And the script was terrible.
Amazing.
The script was absolutely terrible. And then I realized, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not a screenwriter. But then I started realizing like I am a producer because like I know all these because I was an actor and, theater and working in films and hip hop or whatever. Like I knew all these creative people. And so that's where like the realization of what a producer is kind of hit me. And I was like, oh, a producer, like if you have an idea, then you like build a team to execute on that idea and you like push it forward. And so that was kind of what, that's ultimately what prompted me to launch and create Social Construct Films, to be a vehicle to, you know, identify and develop a variety of stories that I could be, you know, basically building the team of who's going to be the writer, director, actors, distribution, all of that. And so that's what started that process back in, like, I think it was like 2009 is when I really launched the company. And then we produced our first movie, which is there on the that far side.
What is it?
Alice. Alice Kills. It is a kind of psychedelic genre movie about a female serial killer in Echo Park, Los Angeles. With a really great cast, and it's an old friend of mine wrote the script, and we optioned the script and put the film together.
Nice.
And that was the first movie that Social Construct produced fully. And it did really well commercially. It was a low budget movie, but it was very profitable, and was distributed in, you know, Lionsgate distributed it in the UK, and it had big international distribution. And so that was kind of like, once that kicked off, then it was like, oh, okay, that checked all the boxes for me from my creative spirit, because it was like, you know, I got to like stop waiting tables at that point. You know, that was like really the first time that I like was able to move into like a professional career that I wasn't really able to sustain as an actor. Like, I had moments of success as an actor where it was like, I made $5,000. I was like, oh, I could take like a month off from, you know, my waiting tables job and go like write the script. And then, but it was like, it was never really sustainable. And then, through producing, I was still having my creative needs met. And it started to become an actual sustainable job for me, a profession.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point for so many people. You know, the vehicle that you think may fuel all of your creativity may just be one piece of it, and finding something else that incorporates even more aspects of your creativity than you even initially thought. So being an actor fueled many aspects of it, but being a producer fuels exponentially. It sounds like exponentially more for you.
Yeah, I like that. It just sounds like you kind of fall into, like, when you're really listening to yourself, you can fall into, you know, more perfect union with the kinds of what you want to be spending your time doing.
Yeah, I think being able to have the awareness of, or allowing yourself to fall into something is a challenge for a lot of people. I think that's where creativity blocks show up, of like, oh, there's that story that I've told myself for so long, I can't do that, or I'm not good at it, but I've not ever really tried it. And what would it look like to try it? And what would it look like to fail? And do I have enough ego strength to fail and fail beautifully and learn from it and grow and try again, maybe in a similar way, maybe in a different way? And that idea of, how can I allow myself some creative freedom in my life versus I can only be creative in this box. So what are things that you do in your life to enjoy every moment, to acknowledge every moment, experience every moment?
Well, it's definitely work. You know, I'm not trying to say that it's definitely like, it's a roller coaster, and some days I succeed and some days I fail, but like, I've made the decision that I'm going to try to enjoy
do you, like,
it.
Tell yourself that every morning when you wake up, or do you, like, it's just an unconscious thought that you have because you've been doing it for a long time?
It was definitely a realization. Like, I can't quite say like exactly how that realization came about. Probably related to psychedelics. So basically the shift that happened through that was an empowering realization that I am responsible for how I feel.
I like that. It's important.
Yeah. And prior to that, it was kind of like, I'm not responsible for how I feel. I am a, you know, uh, yeah, I don't know. I'm not a victim necessarily, but like,
You don't have a choice in life, and life is
yes,
just happening to you. And this
yes,
shift showed you that, oh, actually, my choice is the choice. I'm making the
yes.
choice to
Yeah.
experience it.
And whether that's just holding on to a grudge,
Mm-hmm.
whether that's just, staying angry at someone, not knowing how to like move your energy or anger, like not like being stuck or blocked, like, and not to have those tools. That's kind of, it ties back to what we were talking about earlier of like, those tools are kind of undervalued in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so that's been, so that, yeah, I would say that is the biggest, kind of realization, um, was like, yeah, taking responsibility for how you feel. And if you don't feel good, looking at why you don't feel good, and is there anything you can do to shift that for yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And so how it works for me is, it's really about finding discipline and practices that may be challenging in the moment, whether it's yoga or an hour meditation or, whatever the thing is.
Mm-hmm.
I did a Vipassana meditation a few years ago. That was like a 10-day silent meditation retreat. That was like one of the most difficult things I've ever done in my life. Like 10 days,
Wow.
no talking, no eye contact, no journaling, no exercising. It was just like 10 days of sitting.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was ultimately like one of the most rewarding things. And it, yeah, kind of created a lot of additional breakthroughs. But so anyway, a disciplined practice, if you're able to maintain it, is really, has been really helpful to just create a kind of daily foundation so you don't like get up and, I fail at doing this frequently, but I know that if I get up and I meditate and I go on a jog or do something or stretch or, do something physical, my entire day goes differently than if I get up and I like look at the news for an hour
Yeah.
and, don't move my body. And then I go immediately to work or something.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the realization that like by making different choices,
Mm-hmm.
even if they feel difficult, there's like a reward,
Mm-hmm.
to making those difficult choices. So that's like one piece of it. Another thing is just to breathe, when you are stressed out or struggling with
Mm-hmm.
something. If you're having a bad day at work or you got bad news, whatever the situation is, and to just like sit and process. And there's a lot of other kind of healthy, like I'm not a psychologist, you'd know more about this, but just healthy ways to kind of deal with stress and life challenges. And so like being curious about like what those healthy things are and like exploring things and like feeling out like what works best for you rather than just being like, I'm unhappy, I need to be unhappy. It's kind of each person's journey to try and, figure out how to be happy and fulfilled. And it's definitely not easy, but if you want to be happy and fulfilled, it's out there,
Yeah. You can find it, and it's
Yeah.
a journey, and creativity can be a part of it.
Yeah.
For
Because I
sure.
think everyone has trauma,
Yeah.
everyone has, and it's just varying degrees, but you know, it that has the ability to really shut people down,
Mm-hmm.
or you can overcome it and it can become, the thing that like it can become your superpower,
Yeah. Oh, I like
whether
that.
that's,
I like that idea.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
whether that's ADD or whether that's, just being in an abusive relationship.
Mm-hmm.
If it can give you empathy instead of hate, like if there's a way that you can like reverse it and do like the Aikido, and like
Mm-hmm.
take the thing that should have like put you down. And I think that's
Destroyed
like,
you, and you can
yeah.
move with it and shift
Mm-hmm.
that for yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of good wisdom in that. and incredibly difficult to engage with sometimes. So yeah. So
sometimes it feels impossible, but I think if you keep the hope, that like it is possible, that's like like if you can just find the creative spark of like it's possible, that's like literally the thing that can change your life, of like the thought of impossible possible. If you can choose possible, then it's possible.
Yeah, you're then wiring your brain more towards that than against it.
Yeah. That's that's for me, that's my secret.
Yeah.
Is choosing, even if it's unlikely, even if it feels impossible, just to say like, it's possible and there's a way, there's a way.
I want to ask you, just what is an everyday issue in your life that you've had to use creativity to solve?
I would say personal and professional relationships. It still comes back to that, of like the way that I am with people. And to just choose to be generous. Yeah. And so that's creative, because creative requires like a thought instead of like thoughtlessness. And so to me, that feels creative. And that's kind of like, and whether that's in a business relationship, or just trying to accommodate someone while you're making a deal for a film, distribution rights, or, whatever it is, or whether it's just like you wanting to be close with your family. And, it's like, sometimes you disagree about stuff, and, it's okay. You don't have to like fight to the death every time you have a disagreement with your, wife or your husband or your partner or your mom and dad or your sibling or your, coworker, like kind of trying to see the best in people, trying to see the best in myself, like that's, I would say, like the daily practice that, and sometimes you forget and you get into a fight and you get upset and you lose your cool or you mess up a deal, like whatever the thing is. And yeah, that happens sometimes. And
we get to be human.
Yeah. And forgiving yourself and forgiving those around you, and not, letting it ruin your entire day or week or life or whatever. Yeah.
Sweet. Well, thank you so much for chatting about creativity. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks for listening to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. We'd love to keep in touch, so like us on Facebook and Instagram. We are Sustaining Creativity. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Tag your friends, tag your family so they can listen too. We love to hear from you, so leave your comments, reviews, and questions. And tune in Tuesday for our next episode. And remember, with creativity, anything's possible.